Hello again, Alex from Barefaced Audio here, and here we have two of our reality cabs with Activier modules in them. So this is the back of the cabs if you're new here. This is the front of another cab with an Activier in. This technically is a reformer, but the reformer and the reality look the same from the front. It's just one of them has a conventional guitar speaker in and the other one has a coax 12 plus tweeter. So that is firing out that way. So you've got the 12 firing forwards, and here we're seeing the back. The tweeter is also firing forwards. That's coaxial, so it's firing out through the dust cap of the 12. Dust cap's that central dome in the middle of a speaker. Now, the AVD device here, so this is the augmented vent diffractor, that lets mids and highs out from the back of the cone, diffracts them through this slot. This sort of horn type arrangement couples them to the room for improved acoustic coupling and spreads that sound round the room. The low frequencies come out as well in phase because this acts as a Helmholtz resonator, which is how a speaker port works. So essentially we've got this cab which fills a room very efficiently with sound, so you can hear it wherever you're standing. It makes a huge, huge difference. Just much more even off-axis response, and you're off-axis most of the time. And all rooms, all sonic spaces have reverberance in them. And the way our ears work, we basically, if sounds that are reverberated sound similarly enough and are close enough in time to the original sound, then our brain sticks them together. So an AVD cab, augmented vent diffractor, is easier to hear for you, your bandmates, the audience. It just works better in the mix. People thought when we first launched these that they'd be problematic for sound engineers, bleeding into mics. They're not. They're actually much better because anything that does bleed is more like the original sound, and they don't seem to bleed as much because they're more consistent, so people don't turn them up as loud. It seems to be a win-win. The downside of the AVD cabs is they're just not as cheap to make. And we make them really nicely, so that adds costs, doing things to high level, and we make them lighter, so construction is more complicated to make them stiff enough. So yeah, lots of pros in reality. Downside is you'll have to pay more for them, but such is life. So these are Activier realities. So we have a rear firing tweeter. So what happens is the sound from the 12 and the front firing tweeter head off that way. The sound from the back of the 12 comes out through here. Now, the top end from the 12 on the back doesn't go as high as the top end from the 12 at the front. So then we have a separate crossover that crosses over at a lower frequency and a larger, more powerful tweeter firing rearwards that fills in the sound. So essentially you have a sort of quasi-omnidirectional output. It's not fully omnidirectional, it's more like sort of figure eight output, but that fills the room very efficiently with sound. You've got slightly narrower dispersion out the front, wider dispersion off the back, which then bounces around and gets to you whether you're side on or standing up here as you might be with my head off the screen, that sort of thing. And then the Activier module is in here, that powers it. So you plug in your pedal board, modeler, preamp, whatever, that goes straight in. You don't have to worry about your power amp because you've got really good clean power, impedance matched. You're not going to have any buffering issues, things like that. Very low noise, very low noise. It's kind of surreal that we sometimes don't realize one of these cabs is switched on because you don't hear the hiss unless you've got the gain really cranked or something noisy plugged into it. And here we have the mono version. So that's Activier 1, one input, one gain knob. This is the Activier 2, so two inputs, two gain knobs. If you plug into just one of the inputs, then that input drives both power amps, and then the gain knob on it controls the level of each power amp. If you plug into both inputs, then input 1 feeds power amp 1, input 2 feeds power amp 2, obviously via preamps 1 and 2. There's two preamps in there. And the preamps are just clean, flat response, but they're fully analog, so if you do push them too hard, do put too much signal in, they're not going to clip nastily. They actually overdrive really well. They've got a really cool sound to the point that we've thought, should we make some dirt stages out of these? But for the moment, this is just a clean way of turning up your sound. And then you'll notice there's these toggle switches down here. They are the level control for the rear firing tweeter. So the front firing tweeter is level matched with the front firing cone. And then we've got this rear firing tweeter, and these are essentially pad switches. So we've got -3 dB on the first switch. You can switch in -6 dB on the second switch, or you can have both for -9 dB. The original passive version of the Reality used a rotary L-pad, just as we use in our bass cabs. But for this, we were looking to simplify things, make it easier to use, save space, and having fiddled around and asked our customers who already got passive Realities what they were doing, basically came to the conclusion that no one wanted to turn down the rear tweeter that much, but sometimes you wanted to in rooms with very bright acoustics and things like that, so if you've got a really reflective space. And actually, talking about acoustics, another thing these are great for, not just for your modelled guitar sounds or your, analog amp simulations and things like that. They're really good for acoustic instruments of any sort. The only things they're not brilliant at is acoustic instruments with really significant bass energy, i.e. bass guitars, or say your typical left-hand keyboard bass. Pretty much anything else, short of bass guitars, double basses. Does anyone mic up tubas? I don't know. But anything that's not a bass instrument, these will do, and do it well. So there's some talking on the Reality. So as I was saying, this is the Activier 2 version. This is the Activier 1 version. It's at 200 watts per channel module. Into the 8-ohm speaker of this, you're getting 100 watts, but you can use the extension speaker to add, the expansion socket to add another speaker. So if you wanted, this could drive, well, this one could actually then drive another one, which would be a stereo slave cab. And then you could stack it on top of two more and have a 4x12 stereo monstrosity, all driven by this single 200 plus 200 watt module. So ask us more about how you can use this and tell us what you think. And we will be back for more thoughts on these and demonstrations. See you next time.